Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Every Dad podcast. Once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We are super honored and thankful that you are tuning in every time we have an episode. Anyway, we got Rob, we got Ty, we got Blakey Boy back, and we're going to try to introduce our new podcast person because he got his hair did, and he chopped it all off. He looks 5 years younger, but
it was a lot.
It's good to see you, Blakey
I can
boy.
feel the testosterone coming back after shedding all those inches of hair. Yeah,
Nice.
Man, I don't even want to know what would happen to me.
the hair was.
If I could grow it like that, I would, man. So
like reverse Samson.
I just got tired of it. There's no real reason, but
It's like a reverse
me
Samson
too.
story.
welcome back, dude.
Nice.
I think the last time we recorded, Rob and I were gone. Just you guys.
Yep.
You guys did it.
1-on-1.
So
Blake did a very good
It
job.
was fun.
that's what I heard.
I made the same mistake you did though at the end, trying to figure
me
out what the
talk?
name of this podcast was.
well, you don't have to tell people I make mistakes, man.
Well, I'm trying to
They
let
know.
you know that you're not the only one. I
They
made
know.
fun of
Yeah.
you a lot for it, but it's harder than I thought. So what goes around comes around.
You made fun of me.
He does it to your face. I
that's
remember.
true.
I remember being there.
I guess
So-
I missed something.
What?
But I'm glad we're all back because
We'll
as
talk
much as
about
I
it later.
enjoyed the time with Ty, I think it's better with all four of us. So
Yeah, I agree. We're
Gang's
better
back
together. If we were the Power Rangers, which color would we be?
Next question.
All right.
I didn't watch the Power Rangers.
No
so I don't
worries.
know.
We can edit that out. then.
Ryan was in college when we were watching.
Speaking of Power Rangers, today we're going to be talking about iPhones and smartphones. So my
How to
question
segue.
Yeah.
is, what was
Waited.
everybody's first phone that wasn't connected to the wall? What was it? And how old were you when it happened? Why don't you go first, Ryan?
Me go first?
I'll-
I was, let's see, I got married at 20.
Oh, Lord.
21. So I was probably 23, 24 when I got my first cell phone. It was an Audio Vox 400.
I think you probably
How
heard
do
me
you
wrong.
remember that?
Cell phone.
that was. And the price was 30 minutes for $30 a month.
What?
30 minutes. My first cell phone, Audio Vox. It was about that big.
30
Dang it,
minutes
It had the
$1
little
a minute?
it had-
$30.
It had the little antenna that you could pull out.
Like
so
Zach
if you needed
Morris?
better reception, you just pulled the
Saved
antenna
by the
out.
Bell?
Yeah, and you could. Yeah, it had like a. It was weird, but yeah.
Hold
Audio
on.
Vox 400. You can look it up on the
What
on the
year
old
was this?
Google. 24 years old, 30 minutes for $30. That's what my first cell phone.
Do you ever have a bag phone?
I did. I had a bag phone in my truck.
Nice.
So
Man,
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even think I've ever heard of that. Like,
well, it's
A bag phone?
yeah.
Have
Oh,
you
my
ever?
my dad had one for
A
work.
bag phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so back in the day, like cell phones were like 6/10 of a watt. The cell phone, the bag phone was 3 watts. So
Wow.
you could you got way better reception off of a.
I'm not even trying to laugh. That's very. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed.
So
very
we could
good.
take our bag phone like 4-wheeling in the woods, and if something happened, we could somehow plug our bag phone in to a little adapter that we had, and we could make a
radio
emergency
for
phone
help.
call. Yeah.
Sorry, call for help.
Yeah, radio for help. Yeah, if my tourniquet failed, you know, I
right.
could.
Yeah.
We could call for help.
All right.
So
Blake, what was yours?
it was let me think, Christmas 7th grade flip phone, track phone. I think it was literally called a track phone. I was super embarrassed by it. I really, really wanted a phone. Blackberries were really popular at this time. iPhones were like brand new, so Blackberries were still, I think, the thing. It's what I asked for. I got a track phone, and I had to fake being happy about it. I was just so embarrassed, which turns out trying to fit in is not a good motivation or reason, I guess I should say, to getting your kids the type of phone that they necessarily want.
Yep.
So I guess props to my parents for
That's
not
good.
doing that.
jumping into the episode early.
Right.
It wasn't till I think I was going into my sophomore year where I got then I got into high school and I had my aunt's old Droid that did not have didn't have internet. So I could make calls and text, but I was like, well, people look at me. At least it looks like I have a smartphone, but it still wasn't a smartphone. So it really was going into sophomore year, I think, where I finally got to fit in with everybody.
Well, great transition into the fact that that's probably better off.
I think it was because it was more of a
blessing in
price thing.
disguise,
Honestly,
right?
it was
That
it was probably too expensive at the time for us.
Yeah.
But Yeah. Look,
Oh wait, did you ask when my first smartphone was, or just my first phone?
You did
phone.
great.
No, just
Rob,
phone.
What is
Just phone.
What is yours? What was yours?
Let's see. I had a Motorola Razr with a baseball cover on it because I was real cool.
You were popular.
I
I can
was.
tell based on your answer. You were
And
popular.
then
Poor
I got it when
Saint
I was 14 because going to practice was not attached to the school anymore. I had to go
Yeah.
down the road, so they wanted to be able to track
Joe.
me.
Did the other 12 teenagers in Port St. Joe have a Razor also, or
They had different.
And then we all
covers.
got BlackBerry Pearls.
are you serious? Brick Breaker.
Brick Breaker.
I love it. I used
Yeah.
to play on my dad's.
Nice.
Great transition into what mine is. The very first phone I ever got, I was 15 years old, maybe 16 years old, and I was at Childs High School, and I got it on my birthday, and it was not a Razr. They did have iPhones. There were Blackberries, but I didn't get any of those. I got a little LG slide phone.
Nice.
And
Cosmos?
No, it wasn't called a Cosmos. I actually can't remember what it was called, but if you would say it, then I would remember it. And I had it for 48 hours, and then my mom caught me texting a girl, and I don't think I had another phone for another year or so. I don't think I got many chances on that. So
What else are you supposed to do?
Oh,
with
and he
a phone
botches
anyways?
it.
yeah. Oops, fumble. So, but yeah, that was kind of my brief experience, and then I got to try again at 18. So there you go.
Dang. I feel weird. I don't know.
You know, it's bad when I'm sort of feeling like we're in the right because we were at least teenagers when this kind of started, and
Yeah.
the fact that we're not even close to that anymore,
No.
probably on the average, is a problem.
I don't remember anybody really getting it before 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah, and now, I mean, I think that is a great transition because now, we get to go into the schools, and we used to not do the kind of social media talk that we do because we have one that we would really kind of reserve for high schools and some middle schools.
So let's ask the question.
Okay.
Should we be giving kids and teenagers smartphones? That's I guess that's
There
we're
it
beating
is.
around the bush, right? So there's the
No.
Love
question.
it. Straight to it.
There it is, right there.
Should we be giving
When is an appropriate time to
teenagers,
give our kids
young teenagers, kids smartphones?
cell phones?
Right. And I know the conversation because you hear it, a thousand different ways, but I want to be able to communicate with my child. Right? We've kind of in advancements in technology, that's really the reason why parents, I think, for the most part, what are some other reasons maybe that we've heard, or has anyone, or is that kind of the main reason?
Emergency, right?
Emergency, I want to be able to,
yeah.
for sure.
Well, if you have parents that work, sometimes kids are at home by themselves. Sometimes parents have to run to the grocery store. Kids at home by themselves, and you want to make sure that was the reason we got our kids phones in middle school because they would stay at home. If we ran to the grocery store or something like that, we wanted them to have some sort of way to call.
And this is a good question, I think, just because, what did parents do before 2007?
Well, you don't have to get logical.
when there was smartphones.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
conversation. What changed? What happened? Why did parents all of a sudden feel like, well, now I've got to have a smartphone for my child, or now I've got to have a way or a means of communication?
Yeah.
Where previously it was hey, you guys go outside and play until the streetlights come on.
Right.
Don't tie the cat's tails together. That was pretty much the only rule.
Well, I feel like it was normal for all of us did it. You rode your bike, you walked, you ran to somebody's house. First thing you did, hey, let me call my mom's work, or let me call the house, let them know I'm there.
Yep.
Or vice versa. Somebody come over,
Yep.
they'd call and check in first. And I guess to now, it's don't even feel that level of safety to let the kid go from point A to point B and not be able to track their every
And
move.
I think that's a valid statement. Culture has changed. Sometimes the threat of danger is probably a little bit elevated, maybe a hyper thought right now. So maybe that is part of it. Culture has changed. the increase, because of social media, because of smartphones, the increase in knowing who the sexual predator is in your neighborhood is now relevant information. You can see it really quickly, so you don't want your kid out, and so you want to make sure your kids are safe. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably pinpoint that smartphones may be the downfall of a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of funny, like not funny, but it sounds like culture's changed. The emergence of, kind of social media, and the stat on that is 2007 is when the first iPhone kind of came out. And obviously there were phones before that and that sort of thing. But like the first iPhone kind of representing, I guess, the first supercomputer, if you will, that we had access to at all times in our pockets. And since then, we've kind of used that as a way to, connect with one another online, and then obviously to kind of adapt to that, there's been, the emergence of all of these different social media things that we've seen, and social media platforms, and it's all been, I think originally when it started, it was all, hey, connect with friends, right? Like build this platform where we can all hang out, and it seems like this is always how it goes. But then people take that and they go, oh wow, I can twist that and I can change that. And as a result of that, we have, a much less safe culture and a much less safe environment. And now it's almost kind of like the social media and the smartphone created the problem that now we're fixing with making sure that our child has, a smartphone.
Right.
And so it feels kind of circular in that sense, in some ways. And so anyways, kind of looking at this, and it's crazy when you start looking at some of the statistics. And I just wrote a couple of these, because there are good things, and I do think it's important that we don't just villainize smartphones. And I think what you said, Ryan, is super valid. I mean, I think it's a very useful tool. I think obviously it's allowed us to connect with people, with a snap, from any place in the world. It's allowed us to just boom, in that way. And there's tons of benefits. But I think a good rule of thumb, and we talk about this in the schools a lot, is I think sometimes we kind of check our morals at the door when we jump onto a smartphone in a way that we wouldn't if we were face to face.
Yeah.
I remember my mom and dad used to do that. Like, I'll never forget. I know what song it was. I don't know that I'm going to name drop the song, but I was an 8th grader and I was listening to this explicit song. That was how I found out, the bottom right corner would tell you if it was explicit. And I was listening to it, didn't think anything of it because it was on social media and all the kids were singing it. And then all of a sudden, my mom, she prints off the lyrics to this song, and she has not the first ounce of musical abilities. I love you, Mom. And she starts reading the lyrics to this song. And for the first time, I was faced with the in-person, oh wow, that really is what that song says, right? And it kind of brought me back to reality, And I think sometimes that happens on social media where we'll say things, the keyboard bully or keyboard giant, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden we're, face to face. So it's certainly changed that. But there's been positives. But I do think some of those negatives, are really worth discussing, especially as we're a dad podcast trying to figure out how do we navigate, this, it's not a trend. I mean, smartphones are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. Right. So what do we do to make sure that we're living proactively and not reactively to all of the things that are seemingly just changing, every second of every day. And so, you start looking at the impact that it's had on mental health. You start looking at the rise in depression and how that can be correlated to the amount of screen time that kids are using, right? And so one of the things, it says students who spend more than 5 hours a day are twice as likely to experience depression-like symptoms.
Right.
And then my kind of natural, progression was, okay, well, if that's true, then I wonder what the average time, for somebody between the ages of 13 and 18 are. And does anybody want to take a guess?
It's 8 or 9.
It's 8, right? And so it's okay, so students who spend at least 5 are twice as likely to experience depression-like symptoms, and the average is 8. So most kids are doing that, right? And we see, and obviously there's a lot of different types of statistics that we could go into on, the impact of loneliness, the impact of even some of the things that you're exposed to, like explicit content, and just a bunch of these things that have gone on and made huge huge consequences for this kind of generation that's kind of coming up, to the degree that now again we're trying to kind of go back, because parents had no idea and had no context for what the scale of this rise in social media and technology was going to mean for their kids. And so now we're kind of having to go back. It's funny, like UCLA and USC, like they're now creating these classes in college on here's how you have one-on-one interactions
Is that
with
really
a
That's the
person.
thing?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
They've had to go back and teach kids how to do it. They're calling us, the kind of Gen Alpha. It's the digital native, and so they're literally having to learn now for the first time how to have interactions in person, because all they've known is through a screen. And the last thing I'm going to say, I'm sorry, but is like looking at this, I did not know this, but when you have an interaction with somebody that you care deeply for, or a friend or a family member, did you know, like when you have that interaction on a screen, that there is a release of dopamine, but when you have that interaction in person, it's oxytocin. And so it's that feel good, that intimacy that you're supposed to have with somebody that you care about or that you love. That's not released when it's screen to screen. It's dopamine, which then can obviously have a lot of diverse effects as well. So
let's make this disclaimer that this is a really big conversation.
Sure.
And we're not going to be able to probably discuss and get down into so many different things on social media, smartphones, the dangers and the effects, the positives on that. So if you want to comment, you can comment, ask us questions. We'll answer those later. But, the reality is we're not going to be able to answer all these questions. But we do have some things that we want to be able to kind of at least let's make aware, and let's go, hey, here are some things that we can do as dads moving forward with our kids when it comes to smartphones and social media. I mean, I know you're going to talk about a situation that's recently happened in our own community because of that, but this is a really big conversation, and I just wanted to kind of make that disclaimer. We're not going to cover everything.
I think the first thing that should be understood and recognized is you're dealing with your kids, are living under your roof. They're your responsibility. One of the very first episodes we had talked about if you're not involved or raising your kids, somebody else will be. And what you're doing by giving a child, which is really anybody under 18, they live under your roof. They're your responsibility. Unfettered access to your kid in a way that in a very, very short amount of time can influence them and pull them into situations or instruct them, teach them things that you would never in a million years want them to have. And I don't, for some reason, we've gotten to a point where it's taboo to like invade your child's or your kid's privacy. Like their phone is their space. And I don't know how we got here, but that should not be off limits. Like you should have access. I feel strongly about this, at least to your kid's phone, and they should understand that. Hey, I can go through this and see this anytime I want, and I know that that's probably harder than ever because you can delete things.
Well,
and
the
all that
verbiage
stuff,
in my house is I pay the bill. It's not your phone. It's my phone because I pay the bill.
Yeah. Right.
So I have the right to walk in and grab your phone anytime.
Okay, here's a question for you, because I had this conversation with a guy who had, say, a 16-year-old son who was actually working a pretty decent job. He said, well, if I just take his phone away because I pay for it, he'll just go buy his own. What do I do then?
Yeah.
He's still living under your house.
Yeah. I mean, you're paying the food and the rent and all that. So, I mean, you're still under the authority of the home.
Yeah. So, again, I just would say the first way to break through this is to understand, like, it is your responsibility. The excuse of, well, I need to communicate with them. That's great. I understand that, but you can't use that as a way to just absolve responsibility from the access that they now have to whatever their mind is going to
totally
take them
unchecked.
To. Yeah,
like you wouldn't give a new driver keys to a Ferrari,
right?
And that's what you're doing by giving them something with no restrictions, no guards. And so I think like one of the biggest things out of this is just being aware of the situation, that it's more than just I want to be able to communicate with them. I want them to have it for emergencies, but just be aware of what you are opening up to.
Yeah, it's more than Instagram,
Exactly.
right?
Well, and then it's like he said, like with the screen time and the dopamine release, like addictions are formed very easy.
Yeah.
And then like just the connection to social media and teenage depression. Because when you think about it, and it's I think it's easily chalked up with, well, kids just need to get outside more. No, they are looking at life lived and what they're missing out or what they couldn't imagine for themselves, and that's leading to depression.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly scrolling on what you're missing out on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a design that was set in motion by God, and as a result of that design, I mean, we were designed to experience and live life inside of relationship with one another, intimately and in person. And when we get outside of that, and that's why it's called this is the first generation that's called kind of the digital native generation. Like, when you have a contrast of something, you can kind of readjust back to whatever the normal is. There's nothing that triggers in these kids' brains that go, this is anything other than normal. This
Right.
is life to them.
Yeah.
Because they've had, again, like you said, Blake, unfettered access to social media, and so we're creating we're creating this dependency on something, and it does. It's like what person? It's funny. Like the statistic is, it's like in the 60% of kids that have cell phones or smartphones, or specifically even social media accounts. So TikTok, Instagram, not so much Facebook anymore, but those two primarily, Snapchat. Some of these, like 60+% of kids will have that by 11 years old. Well, the problem is you're not even allowed to have those technically until you're 16 years old. A lot of those have, they've had, precautionary measures that are just completely done away with. But when you have that, like the problem is that these kids then again are being exposed to things that they're not supposed to have been exposed to. And Blake, you mentioned just a moment ago, like, kind of the story of something that's kind of happened here in the city, and obviously being very vague and wanting to do only honor to the family and the people that are involved. There was a little 11-year-old girl that we know from the community, and she had a social media account. She had, unfettered access to that. Her mom, to our knowledge, part of the story is that she didn't even have the passcode to this, little girl's phone. And there was a history in the family of some suicide. And she started as an 11-year-old to experience some depression-like symptoms, and that kind of began to grow just a little bit. And she had questions. It always starts with questions, and it starts with, this is how I feel. What do I do about it? But we know that that emotions are terrible truth tellers. They're just there to wave the flag and say something's going on, and then we've got to have something to kind of ground that back to reality or truth or morality or whatever that is. And so rather than reach out to a friend, or rather than reach out to a loved one or an adult or a teacher or somebody like that, instead she just took that to a TikTok search engine, and she started saying, this is how I feel, this is what's going on. And you walk that down. She didn't get the help that she needed, and she ended up being able to find on TikTok videos and tutorials on how to take your own life. And she ended up getting everything that she needed, including the confidence to actually walk this out. And her mom came in to kiss her goodnight. Her mom left, and she carried out her plan. And when I hear this heartbreaking story, obviously I'm not sitting here saying, that like a cell phone is the reason why this happened. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is an 11-year-old should not be given the kind of access without parental guidance, without the the help, and that's just something that an 11-year-old shouldn't have to face and deal with. And the exposure there forces them to think about things in a way that an 11-year-old wouldn't normally naturally think about those things. And so, again, just a very sad story, but a real story nonetheless of what can happen and what is available on social media as well for anybody that would be looking for that.
The age is what shocks me the most about, and even looking at some of the statistics, you're like, yeah, suicide rates have grown by like 150 whatever percent in girls ages 10 to 14. I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, how are these ages even included in this? And I also, if I could just share another example, because I want everybody to understand that you read these stories, there's unfortunately way more than you would ever imagine. And we all have that sense of, well, this could never happen to me. This will never happen to my family. We have, we want to pretend like it's not possible. And we'll see the signs. It'll take time. I'll recognize it. But we don't quite fully understand probably just how fast these things can happen. Mm-hmm. And a specific story I first heard it on a podcast done by Allie Beth Stuckey, who, for the women who are listening to this, I would highly recommend checking her out. She's got a great podcast called Relatable. She had a guest, Brian Montgomery is the guy's name, and they're a Mississippi family. This was at the December of 2022. They walked in normal day, getting ready for a just a normal school routine type thing, walk in a room and found his son dead from a gunshot wound that he inflicted upon himself. And this is a church attending Christian family. They're farmers. They're just the great American family. They had 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. This kid, Walker was his name, was really interested. He was on the football team. He liked to hunt and fish. And as this dad is describing it, he's like, we were blessed beyond belief. Like we were always together as a family. We always had dinners together. Like there was never any signs. And what happened is his kid was in his room and around midnight was on Instagram and got a DM message from seemingly a really attractive girl. And this girl basically said, hey, I got a mutual friend. We know each other. They just started chatting, and one thing led to another, and eventually led to this girl offering like, hey, would you like to fool around or whatever that means? Is like, what are you talking about? And she starts sending him some photos and content, which the scariest part about this, because the girl who's sending him this was not real. So it's like, where is this content coming from in the first place? So there's probably a whole nother story to this.
That's why we say this conversation's way bigger than we can ever
Exactly.
imagine.
So it's like, where are they finding a teenage girl's content that's not really messaging this kid? And so did you know that you can like video chat or send video, I guess, on Instagram back and forth? Because this happened on Instagram.
Yes.
I didn't even know about that you could do something like this. And there was some sort of technology where they were able to interact where it seemed like it was in real time. And this kid was convinced to start sending really exposing and revealing videos of himself. I mean, these weren't like pictures that you could deny, oh, that's not me. I mean, this was clearly him.
Yeah.
And so the people who turns out this was from somewhere, they tracked it to Nigeria, just opposite side of the world. They sent him a video saying, we've got you recorded, send us $1,000 right now. He's like, I'm 16, I don't have money to well, go get your parents' money. I can't do that. So they started sending him what he thought was videos. We're going to send this to all of your friends one by one until we have the money. And it got to his mom's name started with a C, I believe, and eventually it looked as if this video was being sent to his mom. He's like, I have nothing I can do. I'm just going to kill myself. And this is maybe the worst part about it is they're like, you're worthless. So it's not that these people just wanted the money. They're clearly out to, this is pure evil.
Yeah.
They want to harm him. And so he goes down into his dad's basement and brings out a pistol and kills himself. And all of this happened within 2 hours. This was around midnight when they went back and tracked it, and by, say, 2-ish in the morning, that had happened. And this is a perfectly healthy, all of his teachers, I mean, he was a great kid that just in a blink of an eye got trapped into something where, and I can only imagine the fear that he had. Like, can you imagine that fear of what you think is a video being sent to your own mother?
Right.
And that was all fake. None of it was ever sent. So the whole thing was a lie to begin with. But so yes, it can happen to you, and maybe that goes into a conversation of like, nothing good is going to happen with you. I think at a bottom, like my minimum right now is phones should not be allowed in the bedrooms. Between 9, 10, and 6 a.m., whenever that is, because I know from experience, I think if we're all being honest, we know what we're going to do if we've got a phone that has access to whatever we want on the internet in our own room with privacy. Like nothing good can come of that.
Yeah, and that's one, and I think this will be a good transition into kind of some very practical things. That's one of those, like, I'm okay with that kind of, conflict. Like, you cannot convince me that there is, again, good that can come. And it's not even that they would necessarily mean for something. I'm not sitting here saying your child is bad. I'm saying your child is normal.
Right.
Like, I'm saying that your child is curious, and your child has an imagination, and your child is, that's why it's train up a child in the way that he should go. There is this daily, ongoing, moment by moment training that takes place where you set a goal and you help them achieve that, and actually make that a reality where they are able to then monitor those things for themselves. When they are older, they will not turn from it, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I was kind of looking through, some different kind of stances, because I think we'll probably get, maybe one of 3 different stances. Maybe there's a 4th one I'd be interested to hear. So comment if you don't agree with any of these. I think that would be super helpful. But the first one is like, okay, I'm hearing all this stuff. Absolutely no smartphones, no cell phones, no access until my kid's out of the house. Point blank, period. There's no reason for it. It's not healthy. It's not good. I am running as far away as I can from this thing, right? And then the second one is maybe, okay, I'm going to try and hold off as long as I can, right? I'm not really going to entertain that conversation, and I'm not going to, bring it up to them. But when their friends kind of get a little bit older and, they'll probably start asking me this, and, when there's enough pressure and all their friends have one, or whatever those reasons are, there's probably a bunch of different reasons in this option. Then, we'll kind of, concede and get that cell phone. And then I think the third option would be, okay, we do think that communication, going all the way back to the beginning, we do think that communication is important. We do want to have, because of the result of where the world is right now, connectivity with our child, the ability to connect with our child, the ability to check in on our child. But we are willing to do the research. We're willing to do the due diligence. We're willing to become very knowledgeable. Not put on rose-tinted glasses like, oh, my kid's better than every other kid, but go, no, here are the actual dangers of what's going on. Yeah. So we need to control, and we don't like that, again, because we don't like to make our kids upset, and we want to be their best friend forever. But we need to control what my child is being exposed to, and here are some ways that we do that by educating ourselves and then setting some parameters on my child. And I think it's funny because that one obviously sounds like the most realistic option. And so then my question would be, well, why don't we do that then?
Right.
If what stops us when we're seeing these staggering statistics?
Right.
It's obvious that the majority is not choosing number 3. Yeah. So why aren't we doing that?
Well, you said research, so I think a lot of it is not knowing what options they have. That getting my kid the latest iPhone is the only option I have. I go back to what you said when you opened up the track phone and it wasn't what everybody else wanted. Like, we want to give our kids the best, right? So there's that mindset of it. But then too, you walk into a provider, a cell phone, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever. It's wall-to-wall smartphones, and then you've got to work to find an alternative. Like, it's probably like one shelf with like 3 phones that look like what your grandma has, like that's it. But there are options to provide your kid with a decent looking phone or there's options with iPhone or Samsung or whatever, and be able to put some restrictions on it, barriers on it, whatever. But I go back to what you said, that key word that you said on that third option is research. And a lot of it is it's the path of least resistance. Everybody's got an iPhone. They'll get an iPhone. Like, that's it. I'm done.
I think we also think we don't want our kids to be the weird kid or the
Right.
one that's left out.
Yeah.
And we feel genuine guilt if we feel like we're putting our kids in a position where they're going to have a harder time than others because they don't fit
Right.
in. And so we've got a nice group here. I think if you get a group of people that you're all in a similar stage of life and you can kind of band together and sort of give that kid a group that is being raised by other families that feel strongly the same way, and they're not the only one. That's really helpful. You know, you don't, because a kid being alone in, I don't have what everybody else have. I mean, the reverse is true on the parenting
Right.
side. If I'm the only parent that's making this decision, am I in the wrong?
Right.
Like, why am I being so different?
Yeah.
I've always been the weirdo, so it's fine. But what we did is, you know, we had conversations early on with phone. Hey, this is how we handle this. This is what we do. We have access to their phone. We had their passwords. Like, one of the rules that we had is we could grab their phone at any given time and look and check messages and check photos and check and see what they were looking at. And so it played out for us when my oldest was probably 13 or 14. Like, we had some friends over at dinner, and he just comes out of his room and he's like, Dad, somebody just sent me a inappropriate photo. I'm like, and he hands me his phone.
Dude, that's a win. That's
okay.
a huge
He
win.
hands me his phone, and I'm like, okay. And then so the youth pastor mode goes in, dad mode kind of mixing together, which is weird, by the way. You know, I'm like, well, did you respond? No. Okay. Do you know who it is? No. Okay. Did you communicate with them? No. All right. So you don't know who it is? No. All right. So did you reply back? No. I'm like, okay. Do you know? So I asked him the same over and over again. He didn't. I said, all right, well, just leave me your phone. He goes, Dad, it's bad. It's bad. I'm like, it's okay, buddy. Your mom's right here with me. Like, I'll have her look at it. Like, it's okay. Like, you leave me the phone. You go back to do whatever you were doing, and we'll take care of it. And, you know, we looked at the photo, and it wasn't as bad as it was like now he didn't know who it was, and it was an inappropriate photo. I think it was like a girl in a bikini top that, you know, that's all it was, no face or anything. And so, but again, we had the conversations. This is what happens. This is what you do.
Yeah.
Let's do this. We've got, for our youngest son, we've got parental controls where stuff shuts down at a certain time. So yeah, he may have his phone in his room, but he doesn't have access to apps from certain time to certain time.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't really have what we were describing as just this unfettered access to
Right.
social media
Wide
in
open.
his room at
Yeah.
night, which
Yeah.
I think, you know, is a
Correct.
whole different ballgame. And what-
Correct.
There seems to be a real strong case to be made that setting boundaries actually gives kids freedom. Like I
Absolutely.
think
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
looking
Wow.
they're looking for those boundaries because then it frees them up to know, okay, I know what I can and can't do
Right.
now. David Pollock, who a lot of you guys know the name, former College Game Day
Yep.
guy, Georgia Bulldog. He's super outspoken Christian. One thing he seems to harp on a lot, if you listen to multiple things that he's, you know, podcasts and shows that he's on, is the cell phone in particular. And their rules are really, really strict at his house. Like they're literally not allowed to go upstairs ever. And what has happened, and he's noticed, is his kids just accept it. His son in particular, like, just knows what the rules are, and his friends, when he has them over, willingly participate in it. Like, okay, we're at whatever I don't know his son's name. We're at Johnny's house, so we just leave the phone in, and then we go upstairs and play, and it leads naturally to a lot more free type interactions and time together. So, you know, don't be afraid to set those boundaries.
And I think your kids will respect it. You know, you set those boundaries, and there is this level of respect and understanding that happens in the household. It may not be spoken out loud, but there is this level of respect and you know, understanding, which is phenomenal in a house.
And that's not won over in a day, right?
No.
That's a lifetime from when they're a little kid of just spiritually pouring into their lives to the point where they have no doubts that when you make a decision, even if they don't like it, they know deep down that you're making that decision because you love them and want what's best for them.
Yeah. I think bringing all this back to fatherhood, you know, because I think these are very good conversations and very pointed. And again, like you said, Ryan, we won't get to all of that, you know, and so we'd love to even, you know, maybe hear feedback, questions, and we can come back and revisit this. But I've got a couple of things, you know. I think the question that we disciple our kids, right? And, you know, super churchy words for we show them the way to live, what's right, what's wrong, you know, be imitators of me, the Apostle Paul says. And so I think a good question is, what importance are we putting on our smartphones? When my child sees me, like is my child having to fight for time with my smartphone?
Yeah.
Like, does my child somehow feel like they're in competition with my smartphone? And I remember, I think it was a story from, I won't say exactly who it was, but it was a professional sports athlete. And the athlete said, well, how much money, how much do you make in a day? Right. And he was like, well, I make, I think it was like $8,000 a day or something, being an athlete. And he was like, okay, well, and this is how much time you spend. So apparently he goes and he asks his dad for, $8,000. And he's like, why do you want $8,000? Right. And he goes, well, because then I would be able to pay for you to spend a day with me. And so, and it changed everything about this father's life and outlook and perspective and, on his son's time. And I wonder, how often, we said it in the beginning as a joke, but looking at our screen time, one way you could look at that is the time that you've spent on that screen is time you haven't spent looking at your child or your wife in the face, or it's not time you've spent doing anything productive to build the life that God's called you to lead, or it's not, it's moments you haven't spent, actually, being with the Lord, or whatever it is. And so I do think it's worth kind of looking and just a couple of important questions. How much time a day does your child get you phone free? How is your smartphone in the first place impacting your walk with the Lord? Right? I mean, is it for you a tool? Mm-hmm. Is it a tool that is actually used for communication and for business productivity? Something I've started doing is literally leaving my phone in my car when I get home until my kids go down, and then I'll go back out and I'll grab it and I'll check it one time and then I'll put it away for the night. And I've missed a couple of important phone calls. There's been a couple of times where I wish that I would have responded to Ryan quicker, or something like that. But for the most part, I haven't missed out on anything that
I just think you don't like me whenever you don't respond. Now that I know that you don't have your phone,
to get there just to respond. But no,
I'm sensitive, man. I'm sensitive.
But it's not time I've ever regretted. I wish that I was on my phone more. Right.
That's the point there, and I was about to make that. I've got a 15-month-old, so she's certainly getting to the point where she's really noticing if I'm on my phone or not. And now if I pull it out, she like grabs at it. I'm like, she don't even think she knows what it really is, but I have it, so she wants it. I've never regretted putting the phone away and spending more time with her as opposed to getting those last emails sent or those last few looked at, the Instagram looked at. I've never regretted sacrificing that for her. Likewise, I've never regretted this evening is really difficult. She's really ornery. It would be so easy to stick a show or a screen in front of her and buy myself 15 minutes before bath time and this is over. I've never regretted like just gutting that out, saying, look, I can handle this. I'll take her outside. I'll do the extra work. And just to avoid having to put that device in front of her that captures her attention. I think, and that'll be true however many times that happens. Like I'll never regret that.
Yeah. So real quick, mom, dad, whoever's listening to this, just kind of looking at, I wrote down just a couple of very practical resources, books and, different options that we have that maybe we don't even know is an option. And so I think it'd be important, if you have any more, feel free to let us know. But the TechWise Family is a book that's very, very helpful, that kind of helps you figure out, smartphones and their place and where they should be in your family. Glow Kids is another one that's super, super, super helpful helpful in this conversation. There's a website, actually, we use it in our student ministry to engage and to equip parents, called Axis, and it gives you tons of very relevant data and ways to engage your conversations. It includes even stuff like smartphone contracts that you can actually have and agreements that you can have with your kids so that everybody's on the same page and you can walk through this life and you can have integrity on their side and accountability while also giving them some of the freedom and some of the things that we've talked about. And then there's other options like Gab Phone or Light Phone. These are phones that have actually been created with a child in mind or a teenager in mind, right? Something that a friend of mine said the other day is that you can actually get, I didn't know this, so maybe parents, you don't either, you can actually get an Apple Watch and you can get service to that Apple Watch. So you can connect with your child through that Apple Watch without them having to have the apps and all the things that go along with that. There's something called the brick that you can have that goes on your refrigerator. And when they get home, you set those presets. They tap that brick, and that brick immediately turns their phone into a quote-unquote dumb phone so that they can still use it for, communication back and forth, but it immediately removes all of the things that you have told it to remove so that you don't have to worry with that every day or forget a passcode or forget whatever. Yeah. I guess the point is those are some practical things. There's a ton of advice. There's a ton of ways that you can practically equip your family and really guard your family, guard your child against the schemes and the exposure and the things that are very, very real. And there are, and I'm sorry, the reason I'm so passionate about this is just because maybe of what happened just recently. But some students are going to hate me for saying this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, but there's this new app now. It's called Monkey, and I know it looks so innocent, and this is how they do it. But you can get it on the App Store right now. Your kid might have it on there. Delete it. Yep. The reason why I say that is because it is roulette style chatting randomly with anybody in the world at any given time. It used to be called Omegle or Omegle, and that was banned because of how much inappropriate conversation and pedophile behavior was happening on that. And it is back again in the form of an app called Monkey. And if you can YouTube that, you can see the interactions that are happening.
Scary.
Adults are getting on and chatting with kids, and they will ask that kid's Siri or Alexa what their home address is.
Oh my God.
And then they'll get that and they'll have the access. People don't realize because you don't think naturally like this. You don't know how other people think. And it's as easy as that. It's as easy as asking the Alexa in your home what my home address is. And now all of a sudden you're having a whole different conversation about safety in your house.
Yeah.
This would be a whole nother conversation, but
it's bigger than we can imagine.
I'm sorry.
You said these. To me, I'm like, these kids are crazy. These kids are normal. And
exactly.
Their instinct is to explore and learn the world, and they want to take risks and chances. And I think as parents, a new buzzy type word is trying to go back to how things used to be. It's like unstructured play, sending your kids outside. We have all these, I think I've heard them called devices of certainty. So cell phone, I always want to be able to contact my kid. These nanites, I want to watch them sleep 24/7. It's like as parents, we have insecurities. I think we want to know they're okay 24/7. But these things are in conflict with each other. If you're going to truly let a kid explore and make mistakes and mess up and get messy, it shouldn't be on these apps that you're talking about.
Unfiltered play should be for the monkey bars, not the monkey apps.
Right. That's good.
That'll preach.
That's good.
That's a tagline right there. Yeah. Hey, we go back. We said it. Part of our goal in this particular context of Every Dad podcast is intentionality.
Yep.
Right? We want to be intentional with the way that we are with our wife, intentional with the things that we do with our kids, intentional in our pursuit of our relationship with Jesus, intentional in relationships, intentional. Well, I think this is just another way for us to be hyper intentional with the precious children that we have in our homes. And so now it's a great conversation. It's bigger than we could probably imagine. We could probably spend lots of episodes on all these things, but please hear us coming from actual dads, as we are navigating this in our own homes. Just know that we want to be able to help. We want to be able to have conversations about this. This is bigger than just a few-minute podcast with people that are trying to figure it out. So don't hesitate to ask us questions. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask for those resources because we do take this seriously, and it's a big deal to be intentional as dads when it comes to the phones. Okay,
I think we could explore a lot more within this realm of the cell phones, if especially if we were to hear from people on like, hey, I'd like more specific details or on this type of, to get specifics into, hey, here's what my kids are going through. This is really prevalent. Can we talk more about this? Like, I think we could do multiple episodes on this.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, give us the ideas, give us the topics,
Yep.
and we'll discuss them.
Yep. And here's another thing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm done.
You're
done
done?
for
Yeah.
the night. I feel good.
Rob, you got anything else?
I will say, like, as somebody that has dealt with teenagers for 8 years now, this is something that I get questions on regularly.
Yeah.
Ask the questions, have the talks to your kids. I know this is different thinking, but it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And it goes back to intentionality. It goes
Yeah.
back to protection.
Yeah.
Put them first.
Put the work in, man.
Yep.
Yep. Ty, you got anything?
I'm good.
Blakey boy?
Good.
Yeah, you do. You got some.
No, I'm good.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening right here on the Every Dad Podcast. See you soon.
Bye.